what's going on for the voters who Donald Trump was pretty popular there, and he is now making the two Republicans who were elected statewide, Governor Kemp and the Secretary of State Raffensperger, the villains in the story of his defeat.
Nicole, when you say President Trump's pretty popular there, that's true with Republican voters. It's President-elect Biden who's won Georgia. And that's indicative of the challenge facing both Senator Loeffler and Senator Perdue at this crossroads. They need that Trump voter to come out again on January 5th. It's a runoff election. It's about energy. It's about grassroots enthusiasm. At the same time, they're looking at a Georgia that's changing. This is not the Georgia that elected Newt Gingrich. This is not even really the Georgia that elected Brian Kemp as governor. You see the Stacey Abrams coalition rising in the state, but their whole play here is just try to get President Trump to come down and to try to get those white voters in the suburbs of Atlanta who identify with President Trump's grievances to come out. But they're going against a rising tide and new Democratic coalitions.
Michael Steele, I'll save my rude question for you. The two Republicans there are tainted with investigative journalism that raise a lot of questions about their ethics, to put it delicately. They're terrible candidates in a state that is, as Bob Costa says, is very much trending toward the Democrats. What do you think?
Yeah, but they're Trump candidates, so it works. I mean, talk about taint. It
didn't work for Trump.
No, but the point is, it worked for the base. To Robert's point, you got to look at the constituency that's being addressed here. It's not the broader Stacey Abrams coalition of voters out there. And now Governor Kemp is looking at that, all right, because he sees what the horizon is for him in the next election. He knows where this goes. So you can't be on the wrong side of that narrative. But for the moment right now, Loeffler and others, Perdue, they're speaking in a very narrow space, and they find themselves caught on a particular hook. And that is the one that, again, that Roberts pointed out, is that you now need these voters to get excited about an election in which both these candidates appeared earlier that they now say was somehow tainted or fraudulent. Right? They now need them to come back and trust that very same system overseen by a Republican governor and a Republican Secretary of State, even while they call for their, the Secretary of State's resignation to come out and now get behind them. And it's a conundrum they can't overcome. And so while that coalition outside of the GOP continues to grow and vote by mail, some over 850,000, I understand, requests have been made for that January 5th ballot, right? And then that's not Republicans, right? Because they've been told not to trust that system. What are they going to do? Right. And so here they are asking for people to resign and trying to get the base stirred up another way to get excited about an election that they themselves has already painted as fraudulent and not something they should support.
Robert Costa, I don't start a lot of sentences with saying there were a couple of Republican heroes, or one, but Secretary of State Raffensperger is one. For not, and the bar is very low to be a Republican hero these days, admittedly, but for not bending to the pressure campaign from the two Republican senators and the president. Chris Krebs, the national security official in charge of securing the election, was asked about Georgia specifically on 60 Minutes last night. Let's watch. We'll talk about it on the other side.
Look at what happened in Georgia. Georgia has machines that tabulate the vote. They then held a hand recount, and the outcome was consistent with the machine vote.
And that tells you what?
That tells you that there was no manipulation of the vote on the machine count side. And so that pretty thoroughly, in my opinion, debunks some of these sensational claims out there that I've called nonsense and a hoax, that there is some hacking of these election vendors and their software.
So, Robert Costa, that was such an important articulation of why it's impossible for there to have been rigged voting machines, because when a state's count or a county's count is recounted, there's paper, and you go and you check to see if the paper match the machine count. And what Chris Krebs is saying there, that in Georgia, there was a recount and it matched the vote. How on earth and on what grounds does Kelly Loeffler get off saying he should be fired?
Those are baseless statements by Senator Loeffler. Raffensperger himself said today he believes bad actors, his words, are trying to damage the credibility and erode credibility in Georgia's election and the U.S. presidential election. And the challenge now for Senator Loeffler and Senator Perdue is that they come from the business side of the Republican Party in Georgia. This is a state Republican electorate that's not all Trump rally goers going just to everything President Trump says and echoing it. This is a Republican Party in Georgia that comes out of that Atlanta mindset, the Tom Price Republicans, the David Perdue Republicans. These are people who trade stocks like Senator Perdue and Senator Loeffler. And they identify, many of these Republicans, I've covered Georgia elections, with people like Raffensperger, and they see the facts. And that's going to be an issue for the senators as they move forward here in the closing weeks. Who do those Republican voters actually believe?
That's right.
Robert Costa, what do you make of the sort of impact or weight of some of the investigative reporting in your paper and in others about the ethics questions around both Senators Perdue and Loeffler?
Serious questions. More investigations needs to be done, and the Post will continue to pursue it. But whenever senators, whether it's Senator Loeffler or Senator Perdue, are making active trades as members of key committees, as members of the U.S. Senate, it deserves the hottest possible spotlight, whether they are Republicans or Democrats, because they're elected members of the Senate, not necessarily trading on inside information, but they have quite a perch inside Washington to understand the turn of events.
Hey there, I'm Chris Hayes from MSNBC. Thanks for watching MSNBC on YouTube. If you want to keep up to date with the videos we're putting out, you can click subscribe just below me or click over on this list to see lots of other great videos.